Hello and welcome to Writer Rant, author advice in 5 minutes or less because I have to get back to writing and so do you. So this week I'd like to talk a little bit about breaking the fourth wall. Okay, so I'm kind of doing this right here, right? I'm breaking through as the person behind the screen to the person in front of the screen, right? So there's that dissonance, that fourth wall that I'm breaking. In writing, though, there's a very fine line between doing the fourth wall breaking well and doing it poorly. So, let's take Deadpool, for instance. So Deadpool is kind of based around the idea that, hey, he is self-aware that he's kind of in this realm where people are watching him in the format that it's either a comic book or a movie or whatever. And that works. And the reason that works is it's essentially done for comedic purposes. So he's pointing out the foibles and the weaknesses and the cliches of the superhero genre. And he's doing that with kind of a knowing wink to the audience to say, hey, I know that you know that this thing's ridiculous, right? It doesn't work in our reality. And so it's kind of highlighting these elements of the story that I've kind of always been there, but they're a foundation of the genre, and they're just kind of accepted at this point, but they're still kind of ridiculous, right? So that's one of the better ways to do it. So even Shakespeare, for comedic purposes, way back in the day, he'd do his soliloquies, he'd do all those kind of elements of breaking the fourth wall, where he's just like, okay, hey, look, this character, we have to get into his head. And so he will directly interface with the audience and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking, because otherwise, you don't get a voiceover, you don't get those kind of things. So it's kind of a limitation in theater that needs to be broken with breaking the fourth wall. And so Shakespeare can do that, right? A lot of times it's for dramatic effect or comedic effect, but it's done very sparingly, right? So when it comes down to it, it's like you don't want to break the fourth wall every single chapter, right? You don't want to start it and say, oh, hey, look at you, reader, you're reading this book, and, here I am as a character and blah, blah, blah. You can do that once or twice, but if it's the beginning of every single chapter, it's just, oh my gosh, it gets so annoying. And the trick is that if you're doing it every single chapter and you're doing it as a chance to do an exposition dump, like, hey there, reader, I didn't know if you picked up in the book that you're reading, but hey, here's all this stuff that you should know. And I'm like, well, I already read most of that, so I already picked up that part of the plot, so I don't need it explained to me again in this fourth wall breaking thing. And so one of the ways that that's done usually is like through journal entries, right? So if you have a diary or a journal or whatever, it's like, if it comes across that it's being, that the reader is being essentially talked to directly, it's like, ugh, kind of really pulls out of the story, because there's a narrator, right? A narrator kind of semi breaks the fourth wall in the sense that he's explaining things to you, right, as you're a reader. But when you're directly going to the reader themselves, then it's like, whoa, okay, hold on, like, that's gonna just pull completely out of the story. I mean, again, it's very brief, very momentary. And yeah, if you're overusing it, then yeah, you're gonna be pulling your readers out of your story a lot more frequently, and it's kind of gonna defeat the purpose of the breaking the fourth wall anyways, which is to kind of fill people in and kind of, again, add that levity to like, haha, that's funny, let's keep reading. Too much of it, it's like, okay, we get it. So what about you readers out there? If you come across any books that you're just like, okay, we get it, you don't need to break the fourth wall every time, drop a comment below and tell us about these books. And if you're a writer and you're kind of annoyed with having to do your story but you're limited in breaking the fourth wall, by all means drop a comment below and maybe I'll get to one of your irks in a future episode. Thanks for watching this episode of Writer Rant. I'm Benjamin M. Weilert.